When my brother sold my share of our family home without telling me, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even ask him why. I just stared at the empty living room where our mother's piano used to stand and felt something inside me go completely silent. The house had always been more hers than anyone else's. She painted the walls herself, planted the roses in the backyard, and insisted that every Sunday dinner be eaten together at the long oak table near the window. After our parents died in a car accident, that house was the only thing that still felt alive. Daniel and I were all that remained of our family. At least that's what I believed. The will was clear. The house belonged to both of us equally. 50% mine, 50% his. I was only 21 at the time. Still in college, still trusting, still naive enough to believe blood meant loyalty. Daniel was 5 years older, confident, charismatic. He had always been the one who spoke for both of us. When relatives came over after the funeral, he handled everything. When lawyers explained the inheritance, he nodded like he understood it all. I trusted him because he was my brother. The first sign of change came quietly. He started spending more time out of the house. Late night calls, business meetings, new friends I had never seen before. He talked about investments and opportunities, about not wasting the potential of our assets. I didn't like the way he called our home an asset. One evening, he placed a stack of papers in front of me. "It's just temporary," he said casually. "We're refinancing the house to invest in something bigger. We'll triple its value in a year." I hesitated. "Are you sure this is safe?" I asked. He smiled the same protective smile he used to give me when I was scared of thunderstorms. "Do you trust me?" That question was unfair. Of course I trusted him, so I signed. 3 weeks later, a stranger knocked on the door. He introduced himself as the new owner. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. Daniel hadn't refinanced the house. He had sold it completely. My signature had been used in a legal maneuver transferring full ownership rights, a clause buried in pages of language I never understood. When I confronted him, he didn't look guilty. "I needed capital," he said flatly. "You wouldn't understand business." I felt something break inside me. "This was Mom's house," I whispered. "It's just a building," he replied coldly. "Stop being emotional." That night, I packed my clothes into suitcases. I didn't fight him. I didn't call the police. I didn't create a scene. I walked away quietly. But inside me, something had awakened. The world is cruel to people who trust blindly. I learned it the hard way. For the first year, I struggled. I worked mornings at a cafe and nights at a bookstore. I rented a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a window that barely closed. Sometimes I cried myself to sleep, not because of the house, but because my brother had looked at me like I was nothing. That hurt more than losing the walls. But pain can either destroy you or sharpen you. I choose to let it sharpen me. I enrolled in online courses about property law. I learned how contracts worked. I studied every loophole Daniel had used against me. I read about investment structures and corporate ownership. If I was too emotional before, I would never be that vulnerable again. Years passed. Daniel's big investment collapsed within 2 years. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. The company he poured our inheritance into went bankrupt. Lawsuits followed. Debt piled up. He lost his apartment, his car, his reputation. I never reached out. Instead, I focused on building something of my own. I started working for a real estate firm as an assistant. I stayed late. I learned fast. I watched how negotiations worked. I listened to how wealthy investors made decisions without emotion. Eventually, the CEO noticed me. "You have a sharp mind," he once told me. "You see details others miss." He didn't know that betrayal had trained my eyes to see everything. 5 years after I left my brother's house, I was no longer the naive girl who signed papers without reading them. I was a partner in the firm, One afternoon, while reviewing old property acquisitions, I saw an address that made my hands tremble. Our old home. The company had bought it 3 years ago from the investor who originally purchased it from Daniel. It was now part of our portfolio, and I owned shares in the company, which meant, indirectly, I owned part of that house. I closed the file slowly. Fate has a strange sense of humor. I didn't rush to visit it. I didn't let emotion cloud my judgment. Instead, I studied its market value, its legal standing, its appreciation rate. It had nearly doubled in price. One rainy afternoon, my assistant told me someone was asking for me in the lobby. When I stepped out, I barely recognized him. Daniel looked thinner, older. The confidence that once filled every room was gone. "Hey," he said awkwardly. I remained professional. "What can I help you with?" He swallowed. "I heard you're doing well." I said nothing. "I need a job," he admitted quietly. The irony almost made me laugh. The same brother who said I wouldn't understand business was now asking me for a position in mine. "We're not hiring," I replied calmly. Desperation flashed in his eyes. "Please, I messed up." I know I did. I just need a chance. For a moment, I remembered the boy who used to carry me on his shoulders when I was tired. Then I remembered the empty living room. "I can offer you an entry-level position," I said finally. "Temporary contract." His pride hesitated. Then hunger won. "Thank you," he whispered. That was the moment the power shifted completely. But revenge, I had learned, is not about humiliation. It's about balance. And balance takes time. Daniel started the following Monday. He arrived early, wearing a cheap suit that didn't quite fit him. The confidence he once carried so effortlessly had been replaced with caution. He avoided eye contact with most people, especially me. I treated him like every other employee. No special conversations, no personal questions, no references to the past. He worked in the property maintenance department at first, reviewing contracts, organizing files, making calls to tenants. It was simple work, humbling work, the kind of work he would have once considered beneath him. For the first few weeks, he struggled, not because the tasks were difficult, but because he wasn't used to taking instructions, especially from me. One afternoon, I overheard him arguing with a supervisor about a minor correction in a contract. His old arrogance flickered for a moment. I stepped in quietly. "If you disagree with the policy," I said calmly, "you're free to leave." Silence fell. He looked at me, pride and desperation battling inside his eyes. Then he lowered his gaze. "I'll fix it," he muttered. That was the first time I saw him swallow his ego. Months passed. He stopped complaining. He stopped making excuses. He started listening. He asked questions not in a challenging tone, but in a learning one. He stayed late without being told. He volunteered for extra projects. And slowly, I saw something unfamiliar in him. Humility. One evening, as the office emptied, he knocked on my glass door. "Do you have a minute?" I nodded. He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. "I've been reviewing older property files," he began carefully, "including the one from our house." My expression remained neutral. "I didn't know you had access to that," I said. "I requested it through proper channels," he replied quickly, "just to understand the numbers." And he took a deep breath. "I was reckless," he said quietly. "I thought I was smarter than everyone. I thought quick money meant success." He looked at me directly now. "I didn't just sell a house. I sold our history." The words hung between us. For years, I had imagined this moment differently. I thought I would feel satisfaction, victory, closure. Instead, I felt something softer. "You didn't just sell history," I said calmly. "You sold trust." He nodded slowly. "I know." There were no dramatic apologies, no tears, just truth. And truth is heavier than any shouting match. A few weeks later, I called him into my office. "I have a proposal," I said, sliding a document toward him. He scanned the first page. His hands trembled slightly. It was a structured buyback agreement. You can't afford to purchase the house outright, I explained, but you can earn shares in it. He looked confused. I don't understand. You'll remain under contract here for 3 years. A percentage of your salary will go toward reclaiming partial ownership legally, transparently. He stared at me. You'd give me that chance. I'm not giving you anything, I replied calmly. You'll work for it. For the first time since he walked into my office months ago, his eyes filled with emotion. I don't deserve this, he whispered. That's not the point, I said. Revenge had changed form for me. It wasn't about taking from him. It was about making him understand what it meant to build something instead of stealing it. The next year tested him more than any failure he had faced before. He woke up early, took extra shifts, studied property management at night. He stopped chasing shortcuts. Colleagues who didn't know our history began respecting him. He's one of the hardest workers here, one manager told me casually. I didn't respond, but I noticed. The final installment of the buyback agreement was completed 2 years later. 2 years of discipline. 2 years of rebuilding. On a quiet Saturday morning, we stood in front of the house again. The paint had been refreshed, the garden redesigned, but the structure was the same. Memories lingered in the air. Daniel hesitated before stepping toward the front door. Do you remember how Mom used to yell at us for running inside? He asked softly. I allowed myself a small smile. She said the floors would crack. He let out a quiet laugh, the first genuine one I had heard from him in years. Inside, the rooms felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe we had simply grown. We walked into the kitchen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I used to blame you, he admitted suddenly. After the accident, I felt like you got all the sympathy, all the attention. I hated feeling invisible. I hadn't known that. You were never invisible, I said quietly. I made myself invisible, he corrected, by trying to prove I was superior. There it was, the real reason. Not money, not investment, insecurity. Greed often grows from wounds people refuse to heal. We sat at the old oak table, newly polished, but still familiar. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. Forgiveness isn't about expectation, I replied. Silence settled comfortably this time. I realized something in that moment. If I had destroyed him when I had the power to, I would have become exactly what hurt me. But forcing him to rebuild had done something greater. It had restored balance. I have one condition, I said finally. He looked up quickly. This house stays equally ours. No secret deals. No hidden clauses. If one of us wants to sell in the future, both must agree. He nodded immediately. I promise. This time, I believed him. Because trust rebuilt slowly is stronger than trust given blindly. As we walked through the backyard, the roses were blooming again. Different gardener, different season, but still roses. Why did you help me? He asked suddenly. I looked at him carefully. Because destroying you wouldn't have healed me. He absorbed that quietly. The worst punishment, I continued, was letting you see what you lost, and then making you work to earn it back. He exhaled slowly. You could have ruined me. I know. That was my revenge. Not screaming, not suing, not exposing him to the world. My revenge was growth. My revenge was patience. My revenge was success so undeniable that he had no choice but to respect me. As the sun began to set, golden light filled the garden. For years, I thought getting the house back would fix everything. But standing there, I understood something deeper. The real victory wasn't property. It was power reclaimed. It was the moment he stopped seeing me as the naive little sister and started seeing me as his equal. Maybe even stronger. And as I locked the front door that evening, I felt no anger, no bitterness, only peace. Because sometimes the strongest revenge isn't breaking someone who broke you. It's becoming so uncheckable that they can never do it again. And this time, the home we stood in wasn't built on inheritance. It was built on accountability, on earned respect, on lessons learned the hardest way possible. And that made it stronger than it had ever been before.